providing special coverage of the visit of the President of the Russian Federation to India, a state visit. Vladimir Putin set to arrive in India, and just ahead of his arrival on that very important visit to India, President Putin has given a world-exclusive interview to the India Today group, offering rare insights into all major issues that not only shape India-Russia relations, but global diplomacy as well. Over the next half hour, we bring you some of the highlights from that very special conversation with our expert panel to decode what's been said, especially the business and the strategic impact of this high-stakes visit. And joining us for this conversation, Divesh Kumar, the CEO of SafePharm. We're also joined by Manish Kumar, the Vice Chairman of the Moscow Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the India Commission, as well as the President of the Soltex Group. But before that, let's take a quick listen in.
President Sir, the fact that you're going to go to India, you just said that both leaders are going to cement the guarantees that you give each other. What are the kind of announcements that we can expect? We've heard about technology transfer, we've heard about trade enhancement. What are the solid announcements during this visit? And I ask you this is because the world, and you know who I mean, would be watching.
Well, the world is going to be watching. I don't think there's anything special about that, because, India is a great country, 1.5 billion people. It's a developing economy where the rate of growth is 7.7%. This is the first result in the world. Prime Minister Modi has managed to achieve that, and this is a lot the Indian nation can take pride in. There's all to be proud of. Of course, there are always detractors, critics who believe that this can be done better, but that said, the result is evident. We've got a whole plan for cooperation which covers the most important spheres and fields. The most important ones are certainly oriented towards the future, and one of them is high technology. India and Russia are working together in outer space exploration, in energy, nuclear energy in particular, which is well known because, we are one of the leaders in that field. Also shipbuilding, aircraft building. We have very many interesting directions which are oriented towards the future. Or let's take artificial intelligence. We'll probably talk about that later. But this is one of the key technologies of the future which is reshaping the world as we speak, because it manages to multiply things many-fold, but at the same time it creates certain challenges to be addressed, and we'll talk about all of that. And as Prime Minister Modi thinks and what I think, well, we'll choose what is of the greatest significance at this stage, and we'll help with that. Well, of course, but we should probably not announce them right now, because, all of that is going to be announced in the course of the visit. We will present that to the public. And then the colleagues will present all of these agreements to us, and we'll have to give our final approval to these agreements.
Very clearly, President Putin there saying that the significant announcements are going to be unveiled, and not just India, but most of the world will be watching this state visit with very keen eyes. But on that very first part of a small chunk, Manish Kumar, that you heard President Putin speak about, what is your key takeaway in terms of the signal that President Putin is providing for the strategic, business and defense element of this visit?
Thank you very much, Siddharth. Once again, I'll take this opportunity to congratulate India Today Group for such a powerful interview, which world is going to look, for this interview. Now, what is the takeout from this comment from Mr. Putin? Because one thing is clear, because now we are already witnessing the multipolar world scenario. The fragmented economy of the world is obvious, is changed. Dynamics has been changed. And the from the monopolar world, we are shifting different platforms. So BRICS Plus, now it was BRICS and now it is BRICS Plus. It is the organization not against anybody. It is united for the betterment, for the technical sovereignty, for the energy sovereignty of the country who are the part of this BRICS. So Mr. Putin's, all the comments is very clearly indicating that oil, defense, it is obviously on the table. But what is the take which Russia is looking for is the more deep integration with the Indian economy towards Russia, shifting the dynamics, shifting, those tariff barrier which some countries are putting on us. So shifting that tariff barrier towards the betterment of both those countries. So in my opinion, there are some new areas which
Absolutely, Manish. In fact, we'll hear some more snippets during this conversation. But before I do that, quick word from you, Divesh. And you are in fact building a new factory in Murmansk, as you were saying, and you're based in Moscow. Very quickly, what would be the single most important take that you are looking forward to from this visit?
Thank you, Siddharth, for having me here. And once again, I would like to congratulate India Today Group for this wonderful and most prestigious interview, I could say, where world is going to watch tonight. As you say, I have already seen President Putin is saying about the strategic partnership and all. Of course, everybody is knowing now China is penetrated into Russia in all the sectors. And yesterday we were sharing a stage with your colleague in Moscow, and one of the speaker was telling that, Russian speakers was telling that, of course, we need solution, otherwise China will be more dominant in our country, and India is the only country who can be the good partners for us. In oil and gas, in defense sector, we are doing pretty well. However, as President Putin also said that we need to increase penetration into agriculture, into skilled manpower, as Manish ji also said. And we don't have a barrier because India and Russia is already doing trade into Indian rupees. If I'm not wrong, more than 35 banks have Vostro account where you can send money in Russian ruble or Indian rupees. So these are the factors which are going to be very interesting. Even we are building a factory. We had challenges to send money from India to Russia in dollar and euro. However, now we don't need to face any problem. We can send rupees. We can send, instead of money, we can send equipment from India, manpower from India. So these are the very exciting things.
Your mention of manpower is very significant, Divesh, because there is some talk about a labor mobility pact that can help perhaps thousands, if not hundreds and thousands of Indian origin skilled people, but we'll have to wait for that, as President Putin said. Let's also take in another element from this world exclusive conversation, including President Putin breaking his silence on US shuttle diplomacy. Let's take a quick listen in.
Things have changed a little between US and Russia. The fact that America is engaging you, we would have loved to be a fly on the wall when you were meeting with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. That was an important meeting. Were there red lines that Russia reiterated? What really happened?
It's premature to talk about that. I don't think it would be interesting for you to be a fly on the wall. It lasted for 5 hours. I got bored with it too. But it was necessary.
For 5 hours.
5 hours.
Mr. Witkoff
Yes.
and Mr. Kushner.
Yes, and I was alone. Imagine that. What a disgrace. But if we speak on a more serious note, it was a very useful meeting. Because the fact that our US colleagues brought with them, it was based more or less on our agreements before my meeting with President Trump in Alaska. In this way or another, we've discussed these issues during the meeting in Anchorage. But the fact that they brought to us today, we haven't seen that before, so that meant we had to go item by item. That is why it took so much time. Therefore, It was a necessary conversation. It was very specific, very meaningful.
Okay, can I ask this question this way, sir? Was there a certain specific point where you disagreed? Was there a specific point of disagreement where the 2 versus 1 was just not going forward?
Yes, there are issues that there was disagreement. We've discussed this. This is complex work, a complex mission that President Trump has taken upon himself. Indeed, I say it without any irony, because achieving that both conflicting parties come to a consensus, that's a complex task. Indeed, and I'm sure that President Trump sincerely is trying to do that. Therefore, we went item by item. I repeat that. Somewhere we said that, yes, that is to be discussed. This we cannot agree with. That was the discussion. That was the manner we talked about. But saying specifically what does not suit us or what we could live with, I think it's premature at this point, because this can simply disrupt that manner of work that President Trump is trying to organize. What they're doing right now is shuttle diplomacy. They've talked to the representatives of Ukraine. Now they've talked to the Europeans. Then they travel to us. Later they have a meeting with the Ukrainians and Europeans again. I think they need to engage in this work and not stand in the way.
So you're saying the 28-point peace proposal is now not on the table, but there were leaked conversations. It is on the table. We are discussing it. They simply broken down this 28 and later 27 points into 4 packages. Okay. And they suggested we discuss 4 packages.
You know why this is significant, the answer and the question that my colleagues posed? Because what happens with Russia and Ukraine has a direct implication for India. Remember that the additional 25% tariffs that have been imposed on India, almost like a punishment, a sanction on India on account of the purchase of Russian crude oil, which was offered on a discount. It was not sanctioned, and India, like China and other countries, benefited from it. Manish, wearing your hat not just as a business executive but also as a member of the Financial and Business Association of Euro-Asian Cooperation, how important is it for Russia and Ukraine peace to ensure that India's exports do not face this punitive 50% rate going forward?
It is very important for India and Russia, but not only for the India and Russia, for the world, that there should be some solution, some peace solution for this. Because, you know, all these punitive tariff barrier, because one who is not following in the line of the policy of US, they are getting, you know, the punishment of the tariff barrier. And does India supposed to allow those countries to come here with the genetically modified product to hinder our farmer interest? We say no, because, you know, our economic driver is also our Prime Minister. He is not allowing to do that, because these punitive, the imposement of this tariff barrier is the biggest hindrance for the, obviously for the India-Russia relationship, because now India is doing the balancing act, whether they should be stopping export of the product to American market, or whether as an alternative market they have to choose for the Russia. You see, because Russia can be a big alternative market, and our trade export is too less. And this trade disbalance is creating a big hindrance for the ruble-rupee corridor. Yesterday I was also telling, banking, yes, like Divesh has told that, you know, there is so many nostro-vostro account, but there is no real mechanism of setting the exchange rate. Still now exchange rate we are settling towards the dollar.
I think arrangements of this kind, obviously, like you very correctly said, cannot allow for full free market, so-called free market principles to operate. Divesh, taking that point forward, and just to add some data for the benefit of our viewers, FY25, roughly around $69 billion of bilateral trade between India and Russia, but many of our viewers would be very, very surprised to know that India's exports were somewhat around $5 billion only. And the remaining 64 odd billion dollars are imports from Russia. Obviously, crude oil accounts for a very, very significant chunk of that. But even if you take out crude oil, there is a clear-cut imbalance. Divesh, you work in the pharma sector. One of the leading lights of Indian-Russian trade is pharma exports. According to you, is there scope for Indian firms to export more, to do more? Because Indian firms don't just export pharma products to Russia. We are a global powerhouse in some ways because of both our generics as well as our more affordable drugs versus some of the more expensive ones globally.
Yeah, Siddharth. So see, as I would like to say one word about the sanction, Russia and India. We also faced sanction in the past when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India, and Russia is facing like in 2014 also that they had sanction and all. So it's a general phenomena for us, and we know how to tackle this and handle. In spite of this all sanction, Russia is doing pretty well and India is growing. As far as pharma is concerned, the Russian pharma market is $20 billion. And last month I had a discussion with the Deputy Minister of Health and head of the Russian GMP Institute. He was telling me that still 70% the business is going to the Western company. And we wish that Indian companies should take 10 to 20% share into that. Of course, I would like to say if you will go to Africa, Middle East, Asia and Latin America, Indian companies multiple companies are there. These markets are flooded with the Indian companies. However, in Russian market, very few companies are there. How and why? Because first of all, being an Indian, we are looking for a low-hanging fruits where easy entry access is there. Second, Russia is a stringent market. So regulated compliance are there. Regulatory compliance, you have to follow the norms and rules. Of course,
But Divesh, you are not certainly implying that Indian pharma products don't meet other stringent regulatory and qualification norms?
No, we do that. See, India is known as pharmacy of the world. We export to 122 countries.
Okay.
Almost 65% of the vaccines.
Divesh, let me just interrupt you there, because just to take this discussion forward, this issue that both of you have mentioned, which is the continuing problems around the rupee-ruble trade, we asked that question and put that issue to President Putin, and here's what he had to say on that as well.
The biggest thing when you have these blocks is how do you make it economically viable? Are we looking at alternative payment systems? Is there going to be a BRICS currency? Or are we looking at alternative payments in terms of national currencies? Rupee ruble.
Moving towards de-dollarization, basically.
Well, you know, there is no need for haste. And if there is no hurry, then you will avoid many grave mistakes. Let's have a look at Europe. They created the Euro system and they involved in that Eurozone several countries that were economically unprepared for a single currency. Hence, problems with regulating a number of issues related to the social system. You know, you cannot simply work with the national currency because there is one single currency, hence problems with the budget. We do not have this goal of building a single currency in BRICS at this stage and point. This has to be done very carefully, prudently.
And we need to use national currencies. We need to use wider the capacity of the new development bank of BRICS. For example, we've proposed to create a new investment platform that would use electronic payments with a minimum capital of $100 billion to begin with, in order to create conditions for joint investment, both in our economy and the economies of the developing global south.
Okay, that was also a very, very important element to further this discussion, and let's try and bring it together in terms of what to expect. President Putin obviously told us at the start of this conversation, you have heard viewers, that let's wait for it all to be made public. But I'm going to go to both our guests, starting with you, Manish. tell me what is the single most important element that you expect to be concluded during this visit as far as the economic part of the relationship is concerned?
Again, it looks very easy question, but it's not, because you cannot describe in one important point where the India-Russia relationship can be, find their horizon. But the most important aspect from this whole meeting is that, yes, we have to, it is established part that we are a close friend, close allies, but we have to come out of that mindset and we have to take the opportunity. I will not say exploit the market, but take this opportunity for the Indian companies to be more established trade volume towards Russia, because India is...
But Manish, sorry to interrupt you there, but isn't it a factor that Indian companies with a global footprint might run afoul of the Western sanctions on Russia? There are almost 35,000 plus sanctions that have been imposed on Russia over the past 2-3 years. Is that a fair factor, and is it genuine? What would you tell Indian companies from your own experience and expertise working in Russia?
Very important, sir. Recently, I have an honor to share the screen with the finance minister of Russia, Mr. Silvanov, and he is also here. He is coming today with the delegation. So with the 35,000 sanctions over, Russia's economy, GDP is plus, ruble is stable, economy is working. 3 days after the 9th, I am attending in Dubai forum where the Russian-American forum is going on. Even American companies want to engage themselves with some of the Russian companies this way or that way. So sanction, I understand, this is a global instrument to put the pressure on the economy. But
that's a very important point, Manish, that you make, that American companies and Russian companies are still connected and having conversation, because
and I'm going to attend that. I have been invited.
The access to the Russian market, just as access to any market globally, is a very, very significant issue. Divesh, I want to turn to you in the last couple of minutes of this conversation before we call it an end on this show. From your standpoint, what would be the biggest achievement? Will it be further discussions around energy, or will it be greater access for Indian products to Russia, or the possibility of this labor mobility pact? I'm deliberately leaving defense out of it because the defense relationship has been a multi-decade relationship and very clearly will be one of the most important relationships going forward as well.
I believe last month there was an event in Sochi, and President Putin announced that we are going to do and work in something where ease of doing business with India, because we are exporting lots of goods to India in terms of volume around $64 billion, and importing just $5 billion. So we will see how we can increase the import from India. And there is a discussion of the free trade agreement also, FTA. So if I believe FTA could be one of them. One. Second, of course, agriculture sector like buffalo meat is now going from India to Russia. Many people like that. In agriculture field, there are lots of opportunity. My fellow panelist Manish ji is also sending grapes, right, Manish ji? So he's sending grapes from India to Russia. And of course, field force is more important thing, because now they started sending back to the CIS countries people after this Crocus City event. So they are looking for the Indian workers, because Indian workers are trustworthy, hard workers, and they can work in any conditions. So these are the top things I am expecting. These things are going to happen where Indian people will start access of the Russian market more.
Well, if a labor mobility comes through, viewers, think of it in another way. At a time when the United States, which has benefited from the efforts and the hard work of literally millions of Indians, many of whom have worked in America on H-1B visas, I think a certain element of arrogance had crept into the American right, and the H-1B was vilified. And it's now taken reality to hit them, including President Trump recently acknowledging that without H-1B, you would have serious problems in the American economy. And at a time like that, if there were to be a significant labor mobility pact, that takes Indian skilled people into Russia and allows them to capitalize on the Russian opportunity and adds value to their workforce. I think this would be one of the most significant achievements, well beyond the enduring defense cooperation and even elements of Bollywood that still are significant and important for the India-Russia relationship. So as I close this, I want to ask all of you viewers to keep an eye out for that world exclusive that is going to play out literally just in hours from now across the India Today network, interview with the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. That's all that we have on this show. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.